On the Russian front, the enemy wasn't always the one with the gun. In the vast, silent expanse of the Eastern Front, where entire armies vanished into the snow, soldiers quickly learned a terrifying truth. The landscape itself was a combatant, an adversary more relentless and unforgiving than any human foe. The real killer was the cold, and it didn't attack you in your sleep. It was a predator that stalked you in broad daylight, a silent assassin that worked its way into your bones, your blood, and your mind. It didn't need the cover of darkness. It thrived in the endless, glaring white of the winter. It attacked you when you were standing still. Every moment of stillness was an invitation for the cold to seep in, to begin its lethal work. The body, a machine designed to generate heat, would start to lose the battle the second it stopped producing it through exertion. To survive a single day, you had to learn one rule: motion is life. This wasn't a metaphor. It was a physical law, as fundamental as gravity. Every step, every shiver, every twitch was a declaration of defiance against the encroaching frost. Welcome to the daily reality of a frozen soldier. This isn't about building a shelter. Forget the romantic notion of a cozy fire in a log cabin. For millions of men on the front lines, there were no cabins, no fires, and often not even a roof. This is about how you function when you can't build one. It's about survival in the raw, exposed to the elements 24 hours a day, where your only shelter was the uniform on your back and the shallow trench you dug in the frozen earth. How you fight, how you march, and how you stand guard when stopping for more than a few minutes could be a death sentence. Every operational task, from reloading a magazine to eating a meal, had to be relearned through the brutal filter of sub-zero temperatures. These are the rules for operating in a sub-zero hell. These aren't suggestions from a manual. They are commandments written in the frozen blood of those who failed to learn them. They are the unwritten doctrine of the winter soldier. Rule number 1: never stop moving. This is the first and most important commandment. It is the alpha and the omega of cold weather survival. Every other rule is secondary to this one. You're on watch for 2 hours. You can't just stand there like a statue. 2 hours might as well be an eternity. The wind gnaws at any exposed skin, and the cold leaches warmth from your core with terrifying efficiency. Standing still is suicide. You do the foxhole stomp. It's not a dance. It's a life-saving technique. It's a constant rhythmic shifting of weight from one foot to the other. You lift your knees, you stomp your feet, you curl and uncurl your toes inside your boots. You do anything to keep the blood flowing to your extremities. You're constantly firing the muscles in your legs and core, which are your body's biggest furnaces. These large muscle groups, the quads, the glutes, the abdominals, are your internal power plants. The stomp forces them to burn calories and generate precious heat, which your circulatory system then distributes like a radiator. It looks ridiculous, but it keeps your blood pumping and your toes attached. Veterans would tell you that the moment you start feeling self-conscious is the moment you start losing toes. Pride has no place in a frozen foxhole. The guy who stood still is the guy they had to chip out of the trench in the morning. He became a monument to the cost of inaction, a human statue frozen in his final post, a grim warning to every replacement who saw it. Your rifle is your life, and in the cold, it will betray you. That piece of steel and wood, your primary tool for defense and attack, becomes just as vulnerable to the cold as you are, and its failure is your failure. Standard gun oil turns to glue. The carefully formulated lubricants designed for temperate climates congeal into a thick, viscous paste at 30 below zero. It gums up the action, slows the firing pin, and can seize the bolt carrier group entirely. The solution? Strip it clean. This was a terrifying, counterintuitive act. Every soldier is taught to clean and lubricate their weapon, but in the extreme cold, the only way to ensure function was to remove every last drop of oil. Soldiers learned to run their bolts dry or use graphite as a lubricant. Shaved from a pencil or carried as a fine powder, graphite doesn't freeze or thicken. It provides just enough lubrication to prevent the metal-on-metal wear from destroying the weapon, without the risk of seizing up. If you didn't, you'd go to fire and click. Nothing. That single sickening sound was the announcement of your potential death. The moment of truth arrives, you pull the trigger, and you're met with a hollow, metallic thud. Just you and an angry enemy, and you're holding a very expensive metal club. In that moment, your state-of-the-art firearm is no more effective than a medieval mace. Your only hope is that you can swing it faster than the enemy can shoot. Maintaining your weapon wasn't just procedure, it was a nightly prayer for survival. Every evening, no matter how exhausted, soldiers would field strip their rifles, wipe them bone dry, and reapply their chosen dry lubricant. It was a ritual of faith in a godless, frozen landscape. Here's a cold weather myth. The more layers, the better. Wrong. This is perhaps the most dangerous misconception about staying warm. Piling on clothes without a strategy is a recipe for disaster. The enemy isn't just the cold outside, it's the moisture you generate inside. The goal is to manage moisture. Your body is always producing sweat even when you don't feel it. During exertion like digging a trench or marching, you produce a lot of it. If that moisture gets trapped in your clothing, you're in serious trouble. If you bundle up too much and start to sweat, you're a dead man. The moment you stop moving, that trapped sweat, which is just water, begins to cool. And since water conducts heat away from the body 25 times faster than air, it starts sucking the warmth right out of you. That sweat will freeze, and you'll experience the sweat death. A rapid, catastrophic drop in body temperature. It's a form of hypothermia that comes from within. Your own body's cooling mechanism becomes your executioner. You'll start shivering uncontrollably, then become confused, lethargic, and eventually your core temperature will drop to a point where life is no longer sustainable. The real trick was to dress in loose, breathable layers you could easily vent. The mantra was, be bold, start cold. You'd begin a march feeling slightly chilled, knowing that within minutes your exertion would warm you up. You'd have zippers at the collar, cuffs, and pits to dump excess heat and moisture before it could build up. You wanted to be just warm enough to avoid shivering, but not so warm you were sweating. This was the razor's edge of survival. Shivering burns massive amounts of calories and leads to exhaustion, while sweating leads to the sweat death. You had to exist in the tiny, uncomfortable margin between the two. It was a constant, delicate dance. A soldier would become a master of micro-adjustments, zipping up for a 10-minute halt, unzipping before a charge, pulling a hood up against the wind, then pushing it back to vent. Your clothing wasn't a suit of armor. It was a complex environmental control system you had to manage second by second. To stay warm, you need fuel. And we're not talking about a light salad. The human body is a furnace, and that furnace requires a constant supply of high-energy fuel to fight off the life-sapping cold. Nutrition wasn't about health. It was about thermal dynamics. Soldiers on the Eastern Front were burning 5,000 calories a day just to stay alive. That's before factoring in combat, marching, or digging. Just the act of shivering and maintaining core body temperature in that environment required the caloric equivalent of running a marathon every single day. Their rations were packed with fat and carbs. Forget balanced diets. The ideal cold weather fuel is fat. It's the most calorie-dense nutrient, providing long-lasting, slow-burning energy. Rations consisted of fatty sausages, cured pork, hard cheese, and dense dark bread. That slab of butter wasn't a suggestion, it was a direct order from your metabolism. Soldiers would eat butter and lard straight. It was disgusting, but it was life. It was solid fuel, a log for the internal fire that stood between you and a frozen death. You were a furnace, and you had to keep shoveling coal, often in the form of frozen, unappetizing slop, into the firebox. Food would freeze solid in your pack. You'd have to gnaw on a rock-hard piece of bread or tuck a piece of sausage into your armpit for an hour just to make it pliable enough to chew. Eating was a chore, but a necessary one. This was not a solo mission. The buddy system was everything. In an environment this hostile, individualism was a death sentence. The unit, the squad, and most importantly, the man next to you were your primary survival tools. You were responsible for your partner's face, and he for yours. You became each other's mirror, a living diagnostic tool in a world without them. Your own survival was inextricably linked to his. Frostbite doesn't hurt at first. The tissue goes numb. This is its most insidious quality. The affected area, usually the nose, ears, cheeks, fingers, or toes, simply stops sending signals. The skin turns a pale, waxy white as ice crystals form in the cells, destroying them. So, you'd constantly be checking each other's ears, noses, and cheeks. It became a nervous tick, an automatic reflex on patrol or in the trench. A quick glance every few minutes, looking for that telltale patch of white. "Hey, your nose is white," was one of the most important sentences you could hear. It was an alarm bell. It meant your friend couldn't feel his own flesh freezing. It was a call to immediate, gentle action. Your buddy wasn't just your friend, he was your early warning system for your own flesh freezing and dying. He was the only one who could see the damage before it became irreversible. The warmth of his bare hand, pressed gently against your cheek, could be the difference between a close call and a disfiguring injury. The final battle was in the mind. The cold is demoralizing. More than the physical hardship, the psychological toll was immense. The endless white, the constant discomfort, the gnawing fear, it wears you down. It saps your will. The cold whispers to you, telling you to stop, to rest, to just sit down for a minute in the snow. It promises a peaceful, sleepy end. This siren song of hypothermia was the most dangerous enemy of all. Soldiers learned mental tricks. They had to build a fortress in their own minds to keep the despair at bay. They developed routines and mental games to stay sharp and focused. They'd break time into tiny pieces. Just make it 10 more minutes. A 2-hour guard shift was an impossible eternity, but 10 minutes was manageable. Then another 10. Just make it to that broken tree. Just make it until the shadow of the post touches this crack in the ice. They lived life in tiny, achievable increments. They'd focus on small tasks, anything to occupy the mind, recite the names of everyone in their hometown, mentally disassemble and reassemble their rifle, check their gear, tighten a strap. Any simple, repetitive action could serve as an anchor in the storm of misery. They'd sing, or hum. A shared tune, passed down the line in a whisper, could lift spirits and create a sense of connection, a reminder that you weren't alone in this frozen hell. It was a small act of rebellion against the crushing silence. They'd do anything to keep the brain engaged, because a bored mind is a cold mind. When the mind wanders, it drifts towards the misery, the hopelessness. An active mind focuses on the task, on the next step, on survival. And a cold mind gives up. It accepts the invitation to sit down. It stops checking its buddy's face. It forgets to stomp its feet. The mental surrender always comes before the physical one. And giving up in the cold is final. There are no second chances. The snow covers your tracks quickly. The decision to stop is irreversible. Your final contribution, a small mound in an endless white field. Surviving the frozen front wasn't about one big trick. It was about 1,000 small, disciplined actions every single day. It was a relentless, exhausting, and non-negotiable commitment to a series of life-saving chores. The stomp, the dry bolt, the managed layers, the constant checks, the forced eating of frozen fat, the mental games. Each one was a single stitch in the fabric of survival. If one stitch broke, the whole thing could unravel. It was a war of attrition against an enemy that never slept and never showed mercy. The cold didn't care about ideology or nationality. It killed indiscriminately. It was the great equalizer on the battlefield, testing the discipline and resilience of every single man. The soldiers who won this war were the ones who understood a simple, brutal truth. To stop moving was to start dying.